show that more than 8,000 people have died, out of which half of them, if not more, are children. It's children who are being targeted and killed, and there's no rescue operations that can be done because all communications are cut. And the places that have been bombed under the rubble, how many bodies are there, that is only a guess. I mean, this is inhuman barbarism, that what we are seeing now, and this must stop and must end immediately. The United Nations General Assembly resolution calling for a humanitarian pause must be implemented by Israel, by the world, and all the allies of Israel. The entire imperialist world is standing behind Israel in this barbarity. And this barbarity is such that one can only recall or recollect what Rabindranath Tagore once said: give me a voice of thunder. Give me a voice of thunder that I can hurl imprecations upon this cannibal who spares neither woman nor child. This was Tagore's powerful, stirring call against these sort of atrocities, and that is all we can recollect now. And this whole justification being given in the world that this is not against Palestinians, this is against Hamas. It is exactly similar to some sort of situation that we have faced in our country. जब इंदिरा गांधी की हत्या हुई 2 सरदार सिक्योरिटी गार्डों से, पूरे दिल्ली में नहीं पूरे देश भर में जिस तरीके से हमारे सरदार परिवारों के ऊपर जो हमला हुआ, जो आतंक हुआ, उसका विरोध तो सब कर रहे थे। कोई गुनहगार कोई और है और पूरे कौम को आप जो है अटैक कर रहे हो। और यही बीजेपी आज जो कह रही है कि जो भी हो रहा है वो सही हो रहा है, क्योंकि यही हमस आतंकवादी है, उसके खिलाफ लड़ाई है। हमस के खिलाफ लड़ाई नहीं, ये तो पैलेस्टीनियों को बर्बाद कर रहे हो आप। This is a war against the people of Palestine. And that is why we are today saying that this is something that has continued for more than a century. By a gigantic imperialist conspiracy and fraud, Palestinians have been denied their homeland. It was the end of the First World War. After 1915, when the war ended, in 1916, this entire territory of the Middle East was partitioned between Britain and France. And in 1916, there was a treaty called the Sykes-Picot Treaty. And in this treaty, they divided up these lands between France and England. And Palestine came as an English protectorate. And in 1970, one Lord Balfour sends a letter to Zionist leadership saying that British promises assures you that a separate state for the Jews called Israel will be carved out of Palestine. That is one country telling another country that part of your land will be taken away and creating a third country. I mean, this sort of an imperialist fraud has never been seen, and since then they have been homeless and without a homeland. Then this treaty of creating the Zionist country created for the Jews, that could finally materialize only in 1948. And immediately after that portion for Israel was carved out of Palestine, Israelis then mounted a terrible offensive against the Palestinians, driving them out of their land. It's estimated between 6.5 to 7.5 lakhs of Palestinians were driven out of their homes, their lands. And finally, there was given as a mercy by the Jewish Israel and by world imperialism, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip for them to settle down. Even this was arrived at after the 1967 war, and the Palestinians were confined there. They were just not confined. They were not allowed to live peacefully. They were not allowed to live peacefully. Constant incursions into the West Banks and settlement of Jewish settlements there. Today, with the whole attention being on Gaza Strip, what is being, not there in actual our memory now, is that every day now, yesterday more than 1,000 people were killed, Palestinians were killed in the West Bank. So these attacks are continuing all over against the Palestinians. And the settlements, illegal Jewish settlements on Palestinian land, they have been now armed with private armies. And the private armies are armed by the Israeli forces. So it is the private armies that are today being used to conduct these sort of assaults against the Palestinians. So therefore we are now saying that this inhumanity must end. If this has to end, this barbarity must stop. And killing more than 4,000 children, it is something unheard of, even in the worst of the wars. That this sort of a situation doesn't come where actually families and children are targeted. Hospitals are targeted. And yesterday there was a very moving interview with one young boy. He said, I was very proud of my father. He used to save lives. What was his father doing? He's an ambulance driver. And he says there's no communication. My father hears the bomb blast and goes there to see if anybody has to be saved. He said, I'm very proud of him. Then what happened? He says another bomb blast came, he went there and he's never returned. So that is the life of these people. That is the common thing of what is happening there in Palestine today. Therefore we demand now, immediately, that the government of India, though it is officially stated that the government of India stands by the assurance of the Palestinians of a two-state solution, with the state of Palestine created back to the pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital. This is the UN Security Council's mandate, and this is what India has supported all along. Forced by the situation, the government of India has redeclared this. They have redeclared this. But the point is actually to implement it. Instead, what we find today is complete unabashed support to imperialism, US imperialism, and all these countries are backing and arming Israel. For every year, more than $4 billion was being given to Israel by USA. They have been propping up this as the imperialist outpost in the Middle East. And this has been used by US imperialism, by France, by Germany, by England. And now huge demonstrations are taking place, protest actions all over the world. Yesterday, for the third time, for the third weekend, more than 3 lakh people, nearly 4 lakh people were there on the streets of London, central London. Everywhere people are protesting, stop this barbarity. And we join them. The CPIM joins all these people who are demanding an immediate end to this barbarity. Go back to the UN, and UN must re-energize itself and implement its own mandate of a two-state solution with the creation of Palestinian state with pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital. This is what the CPIM is advocating. We join the protests all over the world that are taking place peacefully against Israel's barbarity, and we want the government of India to strictly adhere to its own stated position of working for a two-state solution. And this is something the government of India, by its own admission, has said is India's position. So that should be implemented and that should be carried forward. So therefore, the CPIM central leadership today from all over the country, from every state is here, and we are in this protest, and for this protest meeting.
Comrades, greetings to all. We The PB and CC members of the CPIM and other comrades are here to protest against the inhuman genocide that is going on against the Palestinian people and the support being extended to the Israel regime by the government of India in blatant violation of our time-tested policy of solidarity with the Palestinian people who fight for their own land. It is really shocking that the government of India has gone to the extent of abstaining from the discussion of the UN resolution, supporting Israel and the US. We have stooped to the level of becoming an ally of their nexus. What we are witnessing today is the brutal massacre of the Palestinian people by the Zionist Israeli regime. The reality is that innocent people are being killed. Women and children are being murdered. If we do not condemn this massacre, we are being complacent in this ethnic cleansing. Subsequent to the current conflict, as of 27th October, 7,326 Palestinians have been killed. 18,967 Palestinians have been injured. 1.4 million Palestinians have been uprooted, and 27,781 residential units have been destroyed in Gaza alone. Despite this deplorable loss of precious human lives, India abstained on a resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly calling for a humanitarian truce. Even when the international community overwhelmingly demanded that there be an immediate halt to the violence, India chose not to support it, laying bare the current administration's blind support to the US-backed Zionist regime in Israel. Strong protest should be registered over India's shameful vote of abstention. We should be ashamed. The emergency session of the UN General Assembly was called under the Uniting for Peace mandate. The General Assembly called for the immediate and unconditional release of all civilians being illegally held captive, demanding their safety, well-being, and human treatment in compliance with international law. It also reaffirmed that a just and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can only be achieved by peaceful means based on the relevant UN resolutions and in accordance with international law and on the basis of the two-state solution. Despite the General Assembly's position being aligned to India's time-tested stance on the issue, we abstained. Indian people's support to the legitimate Palestinian right to their homeland predates our independence and was part of our freedom struggle. Our support to the Palestinian cause emerged as a national consensus. India's current vote in the UN General Assembly and in the UNHRC 2 years back violates this consensus. It is a complete U-turn from our erstwhile stand, which had manifested in India consistently championing all the UN resolutions and opposing Israel's blatant violations of those resolutions and its illegal occupation of Palestinian lands. The open backing of the US administration has emboldened the Israeli government. It enacted a law declaring Israel as a Jewish nation state. The Gaza Strip, home to over 2 million Palestinians, is repeatedly under Israeli attack. Since 2007, Israel has imposed a blockade. Even humanitarian aid is allowed to enter Gaza only if Israel so desires. In 2020, the UN called Israeli occupation in Palestine the longest belligerent occupation in the modern world. Israel also earned the dubious distinction of being the most condemned country by the General Assembly of the United Nations. The left in India has always stood by the Palestinian cause, and even now we stand resolutely with the Palestinians. It is evident in the joint statement issued by the CPIM and CPI yesterday. Respecting the overwhelming mandate of the UN General Assembly, there must be an immediate ceasefire. Let me conclude by once again expressing solidarity with the people of Palestine and the cause of Palestine. Let us continue our joint efforts so that India retains its moral compass and stands with the oppressed against the oppressors. Thank you.
हमारे तमाम पॉलिट ब्यूरो मेंबर्स, हमारे जनरल सेक्रेटरी कॉमरेड सीताराम के नेतृत्व में हमारी पूरी केंद्र कमेटी आज यहाँ इस विरोध धरना पर फिलिस्तीनी जनता के बुनियादी हकों की जीने के अधिकार, देश के जीने के अधिकार और उनकी एकजुटता, इनके साथ एकजुटता प्रकट करने के लिए ये हमारा धरना है। और आज जब हम आवाज उठाते हैं, हमारी आवाज दुनिया की उस पूरी जनता की आवाज है जो समझ रहे हैं कि ये इजराइल और ज़ायनिस्ट का जो हमला है वो किसी आतंकी ग्रुप जिसको वो कहते हैं उसके खिलाफ कतई नहीं है। उनका हमला इस बात को लेकर है कि फिलिस्तीनियों का देश का बुनियादी अधिकार को समाप्त किया जाए और पूरी फिलिस्तीनियों का जो जमीन है उसको कब्जा किया जाए। और इसीलिए जब आज हम लोग फिलिस्तीनी जनता के साथ एकजुटता प्रकट करते हैं, हम ये भी कहते हैं कि इजराइल की जो ये झूठे प्रचार है कि वो हमास के खिलाफ है, इसको भी आज हम चुनौती देते हैं और हम कहते हैं कौन सा हमास है वेस्ट बैंक में, कौन सा हमास है जिसके कारण आप केवल गाजा में नहीं, आप आज वेस्ट बैंक पर भी हमला कर रहे हैं। इससे स्पष्ट है कि आपका उद्देश्य क्या है और हम इसको समझ रहे हैं, हम इसको देख रहे हैं और उसके खिलाफ आज हम लोग इकट्ठे हुए हैं। मेरे प्रिय साथियों, इजराइल की ये हिम्मत इसलिए है क्योंकि अमेरिका का पूरा ताकत इजराइल के साथ लगा हुआ है। कितनी शर्म की बात है कि आज ये बर्बर अत्याचार हम लोग कल्पना नहीं कर सकते हैं। आज यहां हम लोग बैठकर विरोध कर रहे हैं। आज गाजा में इस वक्त इस पल इजराइल की वो ताकतें गाजा में जाकर बच्चों को, महिलाओं को कत्लेआम कर रहे हैं, मार रहे हैं। पूरा अस्पतालों का बॉम्बिंग के साथ और अटैक्स के साथ अस्पतालों में ये वॉर क्राइम नहीं है तो क्या है? और आज दुनिया देख रही है, आज यूनाइटेड नेशंस में ये हालात बने हैं कि बच्चों की कत्लेआम में भी साम्राज्यवाद अपनी गंदी राजनीति को कर रहे हैं। और आज हम लोग इस बात के लिए भी खड़े हैं, हम दुनिया को बताना चाहते हैं कि हिंदुस्तान सरकार ने जो शर्मनाक एब्सटेंशन किया है यूनाइटेड नेशंस में, ये कतई हिंदुस्तान की जनता की आवाज नहीं है साथियों। ये आज हम बताना चाहते हैं। आपने सुना हमारी इतिहास क्या है। हमारे देश की इतिहास क्या है। और आज ये मोदी सरकार पूरे देश के इतिहास को एक तरफ रखकर अमेरिका के एक सबऑर्डिनेट एलाय के रूप में अब स्टेट करते हैं। ऐसे यूनाइटेड नेशंस की जनरल सेक्रेटरी ने कहा कि हमास ने जो किया है, हमास का जो अमानवीय हमला था इजराइल में घुसकर नागरिकों के खिलाफ, वो था, लेकिन उसका कॉन्टेक्स्ट है, उसका एक बैकग्राउंड है। वो हम नहीं, वो सीपीएम नहीं, ये यूनाइटेड नेशंस का सेक्रेटरी जनरल ने कहा कि आप उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट को भूल नहीं सकते हैं कि इतने सालों से अमेरिका और तथाकथित मजबूत देश खड़े होकर फिलिस्तीनियों की 16 साल, मेरे प्रिय साथियों, 16 साल ब्लॉकेड हुआ गाजा का, और उस 16 साल में इजराइल और अमेरिका की मदद से सेटलर्स के नाम पर वहां तमाम लोगों को वहां सेटल किया गया, और आज 10,000 हथियार वो सेटलर्स को दिए गए। वहां कल क्या हुआ वेस्ट बैंक में, किसान ऑलिव का जो एक फल है, ऑलिव, वेस्ट बैंक मशहूर है ऑलिव्स की पैदावार में। वेस्ट बैंक की फिलिस्तीनी किसान जा रहे थे फल करने के लिए, यही एक मौसम है, उनकी पूरी जीविका है उस पर वेस्ट बैंक में। लेकिन सेटलर्स ने जाकर ब्लॉकेड करके उन्होंने उस पर हमला करके मार दिया। ये कौन सा हमास है? ये झूठ है, ये सरासर झूठ है। और शर्म की बात है कि मोदी सरकार उसमें शामिल है, उस महाझूठ में। और इसलिए हम जानते हैं एक महिला की आज क्या स्थिति है वहां, उसकी बच्ची इंक्यूबेटर में है, लेकिन फ्यूल नहीं देने जा रहे हैं, ब्लॉकेड हो गया। डीजल फ्यूल वो नहीं भिजवा रहे हैं, बिजली नहीं है। बोल दिए कि 12 घंटा के अंदर अंदर अगर ये ब्लॉकेज नहीं उठता है, अगर ये ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड नहीं पहुंचता है, तो सैकड़ों बच्चे उस इंक्यूबेटर में मरेंगे। ये दुनिया है जो देख रही है, हम बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकते साथियों। और इसलिए सीपीएम की लीडरशिप ने ये तय किया, ये बात सही है, ये प्रतीकात्मक है, 1 घंटे का धरना है, लेकिन हम मैसेज देना चाहते हैं इस सरकार को कि जो तुम कर रहे हो, तुम केवल फिलिस्तीनियों की स्वार्थ के खिलाफ नहीं, तुम दुनिया के देश की आजादी के खिलाफ सिर्फ नहीं कर रहे हो, लेकिन हिंदुस्तान की जनता की सेंटिमेंट्स और इतिहास पर तुमने हमला किया, और उसके खिलाफ देश भर में हम लोग विरोध करेंगे। आज केरल के अंदर, केरल के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, यहाँ एक ही मात्र ये मुख्यमंत्री है जो यहाँ खड़े होकर धरना में शामिल होकर वो कह रहे हैं कि हम फिलिस्तीनी जनता के साथ हैं। ये क्यों? ये हमारे दायित्व है कि साम्राज्यवाद के खिलाफ फिलिस्तीनी जनता के साथ एकजुटता प्रकट करके हम आगे बढ़ें। और आखिर में मैं ये भी कहना चाहूंगी, ये साम्राज्यवाद विरुद्ध युद्ध है, ये धार्मिक युद्ध नहीं है। बहुत लोग यहाँ हमारे देश में ये कहने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं कि मोदी जो किया सही किया, धर्म के नाम पर उनकी संकीर्ण, उनकी सांप्रदायिक सोच इस सरकार को प्रभावित कर रही है। हम कहते हैं ये देश बचाने का ये एक संघर्ष है, और सीपीएम उस संघर्ष के साथ है और हम पूरी जनता से, देश की जनता से अपील करते हैं, आओ इस संघर्ष में शामिल होकर हमारी जनता की आवाज उठाकर फ्री पैलेस्टाइन, support the political solution suggested by the United Nations of two nations. Israel will live in peace when Palestine's land, the Palestinians' rights will be guaranteed. And that is what we stand for. We demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. We demand the raising of the blockade to ensure humanitarian aid, and we demand that the world and its leaders recognize the fundamental right of Palestinians to exist. Let us take this struggle forward. Free Palestine, stop the war, ensure humanitarian aid. Thank you.